This video was in response to a judge. I don't know his first name. I don't know him. But one of the police officers interstates. See, he's speaking about crimes, and this is on a mass scale. The names of the people, the sciences, are being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. Where and how everyone came through campuses too, as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim. Where and how self valued roles are with our founders' communications replaced, and it pretended debatable. Part of the way that is gotten away with is per things that are manifest in the sciences that we are prevented free speech to address because our words are changed and faked on a mass scale. Connecticut's Channel 3 News has rules with people involved with interstates, with the name Scalora, also intercities and inter and intra campuses involved with predicate acts with news at the same time with interbranch on all sides of criminal and civil cases and their names, their people tied to them, their kids, the differences of themselves, of their kids, and the value of their age and of those of others. The difference of that is also used by the preaching method. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, but we have had that left out and replaced along with James Madison's and our founders' communications regarding how the breaching method before they were born assigned roles, northern colonies and southern colonies, through those distinct nations, distinct natures of companies associated with them, natures of industries, natures of everything that, differences A through Z, including the names of the people, the sciences. A certain type of, since before America's founders were born, but since before modern religious messengers were born, already from off the identity of campuses and exceptions that they worked with, because nature provides that to us for a value. Ancient Rome wasn't great because it was the biggest. Ancient Rome is the biggest we remember because ancient Rome was being led by and following that system that uses where and how we are a species volume science. We are a species volume, individual body as a species of individual bodies with all group differences generated by that which is also showing us that there are other species bodies that it's generating as itself, not as anything, but as all things anyway, which is one of the ways we could discern it. And where we could discern its individual identity of value progression to an extent, it comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself and the value of that equally increasing if we pay attention. And it comes with the nature of itself, the parts of the nature of itself, as a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. That is hyperconjunctive to all parts of everything, therefore English grammar. To the parts, its body is distinctly coming to from what as with and for itself, distinctly to the parts of the self, of any self, even if it's made up. In other words, and the group parts are active, and the progressive parts. But per its definition of progressive, nature shows us its body to an extent, wherein how it shows us the value of seasons that are not even here yet, even if they never get here. It shows us to an extent they are only increasingly valued. But where and how it shows this, and where and how we could, and nature obligating us to communicate about it. We have systems and have been systems that obligate the opposite simultaneously. So it's relative to all things, things, where and how both nature's communications to us and our founders are replaced, and there are self-valued roles with it. Forgiveness is so it's for all ways so we can be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. For example, forgiveness is important because to discern the hyperforeign breaching method, we just have to look where all are guilty. We could all discern that everyone was obligated by nature to not leave out how we have black people's whites of eyes, and simultaneously, hyper additionally, to not leave out how our founders declassified communications to us about how a breaching method reassigned what nature communicates with black people's whites of eyes, and it made a whole bunch of crazy laws to have our own people as the human species body of individual bodies sense for it if everyone wasn't roles with all natures of difference and motivations tied to the differences racketeering worse than war crimes. See, the experts at Connecticut, Weathersfield Police and Connecticut's Whiting Forensics have roles with state police families interstates and with FBI and other agencies, foreign and domestic military, and their roles with them, like they have mental health. They have doctors on a mass scale using organized crime methods where they put fake transcripts and conversations with little kids and with adults. And these are people that are doing and having done this with the news at the same time. What motivated them to do that is relative to what's been measuring and maintaining under the guise of other motivations. Collusion/S with its predicate acts with facts methods, plural roles with the breaching method, the hyperforeign, so to speak. But it is recorded scientific value inside the communications of our founders, replaced right from the communications of our founders, even though it's recorded. James Madison's plan is what George Washington agreed to help and to use, but we have to be honest about his extortion, which we have to be honest about everyone's extortion simultaneously. Everyone who pretends that's debatable, the only way they get away with pretending they don't realize that they're debating that, using criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw fact, true nature, quality aspects in nature, while being and having been used remotely by layers of other names involved with our conversations that are real and ones that are increasingly fake. And it's also relative to at the last second where they go before, they have a mass stream of people getting arrested at superior courts, for example. They have a mass stream of people going into elderly homes where they have them people locked up, and they have probate court judges where they have medicines. And they have subject treatments regarding mental health or any subject treatment. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I recorded doctors and lawyers involved with organized crime acts and methods, predicate acts with facts methods that are also being and haven't been employed at and as collusions of a whole bunch of natures of crimes like murders, untimely deaths that are intercities and other natures, and child abusers, leaders of kids force, child abusers, elderly abusers force. And at prisons, these are people also at and next to the state corrections offices through time. As people involved also with Weathersfield Police that attached me to fake conversations with themselves, and even being at the Weathersfield Police Station as a kid, and then as an adult. There's an older there's a Mendez police family involved at intercities, on off campuses, and on off news locations, involved with wire crime acts and facts method, from wire crime, predicate acts with facts methods with them, mail crime, falsified police reports, roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. This is also where and how they leak on a mass scale while pretending other. This is also where and how the identities of the names of people, the sciences, including the law. They learned a lot of things by the breaching method. Oh, but that's always been. In other words, the breaching method. It's always been that our founders, and then even further as a president, James Madison still didn't have free speech. One of the proofs, for example, slavery was still entrenched. Northern colonies and southern colonies. how James Madison's plan forced that. And that's what the Monroe Doctrine is about too. People want to use their knowledge of good and evil to get over. This is also why see, but you guys can't be honest about the reception of any science, any of sequence truth, too, regarding the Old Testament per science. And then you want to have campuses that have experts on things, and they understand the book out of sequence. Before the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for example, in the story of Adam and Eve and their generation, the names of their generation comes apart in the Old Testament. It says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. But no one even knows about that part. I never hear anyone speak about it, even though it says only defend right here. See, people since some ancient times have been valuing differences, our difference, our human species body of individual bodies, that different from the other species bodies. They have two eyes too, no, differently, but also simultaneously, for a distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is neither us nor them, which is one of the things, true always, that it is constantly. And see where the value or the difference, no, of things that are constant or variably true or positive. That is appreciated by ancients, as the sciences were. They're appreciating a hyperconjunction to our words, our short words, therefore the long words, that we are forbids free speech to address, to appreciate properly. The nature of debate forces pretended, worth by people, worth per nature's definition of worth. Because, for example, nature shows us that one of the reasons that we appreciate value having relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, and not just to neutrality, but in other words, it's roles with a special difference too. For example, here, as our value progression here, or as our special difference, as nature shows us. That's one of the differences between the species bodies, is appreciation of a special difference. But humanity has self-value rules with a human fact attributing nature breaching method, a hyperforeign predicate acts with facts method. So we constantly have the interbranch are shown by a breaching method. They need to hide how they had collusion /S with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes under the guise of it being mental health, where how the relativity of the rules with organized crimes at those locations. And with the World Trade Center, the World Trade Center has names added next to it, and at the court next to it, the Ninth Circuit Court, it names on all sides of that case, their sources, and the lawyer brought up at the same time next to Central Connecticut State University, foreign and domestic military intelligence, involved with people in the intercities with the campuses through time. Where and how we have these questions, like where and how they could go back and forth with the same subject treatments. Like, in other words, there are people involved with gun crimes with little kids and like counters to things that have collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, with the method that consciously puts people that don't even know each other at all, never did, and has people that don't know each other and they make fake exception that shows the same thing. I walked by a Don LeConte for 1 second, in other words, and I never had a word of conversation with her. Increasingly, she's involved with people involved with the World Trade Center attack, intercities. I never saw her on a campus in my life, a Don LeConte. Increasingly, the intelligence community with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, a whole bunch of different countries, and the family members and professionals next to news locations and other natures of journalists and people associated with communications, including the difference between the news locations and the public television locations that the same foreign and domestic families haven't had collusions with, also with lawyers of the FBI, former FBI director, and of the Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron, and are one associated with the foreign and domestic families involved with him too, with the foreign and domestic military involved with them communicating other than they pretend while they're faking fake transcripts on a mass scale. Increasingly, there are collusions at all natures of crime scenes with foreign names and with a hyper foreign name, and their extended family members with their differences. There were differences rackets in the past that has the phenomenon of illusions that they need to keep, and people kept shown needs to keep things blamed on other things, others themselves, and to act fake motivations through the World Wide Web and at locations where this is also behavior racketeering worse than war crimes, where and how the interbranch have been switching and forging names with people associated with this judge. And there's also a Dean Judd and his family members at Central Connecticut State University. I never met him in my life. His son, I never had a word of conversation with his son. His son is involved with people with Hartford Court's family members and intimate ties with foreign and domestic military before and after the World Trade Center attack. They have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have an Officer Hunter, or that's who they said it was his name. He's involved with Central Connecticut State University. And then on Park Street too. There are roles on Park Street through time, with people from Wethersfield Interbranch and next to the state offices involved with him, and other police forms, intercities planting evidences at the campuses, predicate acts with facts roles, name roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and their lawyers, their sources, and the news at the same time. The difference of the guilt with the intelligence there or next to them. Too, these are increasingly people collusion/S with names involved with U/S of the difference of it being names involved with locations and motivations, narratives regarding their roles next to the state capitol or ones at it. In other words, like a Chet Casper and a Mark Violet and others, Jonathan Maiano. They have educators. These are people I never had classes with. They made a fake exception with Jonathan Maiano, which was them recording, planting fake exceptions too, and using that criminally for and influence tactical illusions raw. And their roles with confessions that they can't help making because their roles with their educators too, with sequence shifts, planting evidences at and next to campuses on all sides of people's houses. So in other words, through time, they have wire crime acts and methods, the police departments. They have roles of all kinds of natures of violence, things that they're supposed to be against. They have it for it to attain. Then they go fishing when people bring it up as the breaching method employed. But see, they saw this as they learned this interstates. It's manifest that way. So, well, that's power. In other words, and they self-evaluate while they're countering things, pretending that there was any reading of statutes of precedents, not criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions raw. In many ways, thank God I'm not a lawyer. Because they're people that want to be good, they just don't know how to be, so they start acting. Try to fake it to make it. To be good, you knew that when you were a little kid. More and more, they're changing and replacing what our founders communicated, though. So it's harder and harder to discern this. But nature will increasingly demonstrate, even though nature is increasingly demonstrating it, making it easier. In other words, that there was a predicate acts with facts method that was employed against names and differences A through Z of the human species body, of individual bodies that make use of the names of the sciences. Therefore, the names of the people, the sciences. But see, from off those locations, from off the location /S everywhere the human species body of individual bodies has body. People were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to blame other things, others themselves, with the breaching method caused. This is also where and how people have the audacity to pretend they couldn't understand the hyper evidential, and when people use how we have black people's whites of eyes, and how nature itself shows us obligations to discern where and how there are organized crime acts and methods, and there are styles like that with predicate acts with facts, much worse than people are put in jail for, are the people at the jails too. So their narratives regarding Puff Daddy in the jails, Mark Violet, a whole bunch of other people from other areas recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed they have roles with people named O'Brien and Kalal and others I don't even know the names of, involved with them, planting evidences from other areas on my street. And, the ones I know the name of too, to make it look like we're tied as a group, or I know them. As ones that didn't even go to the same campus, they're putting identity theft, acting at locations tied to people putting predicate acts with facts in databases. So there are more people that were involved with the principal upskirt nature, who are involved with the Dean Judge, and with interstates, with Florida, with Washington, D.C., with New York, with Connecticut, with Rhode Island. To UConn, too, the law is that you guys are not supposed to hide, but you guys have criminally foreign influence readings of law, statutes and precedents regarding good campus. We have to train the mental health people. There are also tactically delusions wrought readings of American history and of principles themselves relative to why and how they left out black people's whites of eyes. And they have some KKK, black theme, Latino theme. They have judges and prosecutors involved with wire and mail crime acts and methods and digital crimes, changing and faking digital evidences as collusions with violence and with people involved with poisons, intercities connected, untimely deaths, and murders. And ones years apart that were timed collusion use of those people that had the high lie progressions because they did it in the past from the back, acting with the people putting predicate acts and facts in databases. Increasingly, these are people with wire crimes in the same house /S involved that and next to the corrections offices, not next to the judicial branch offices, and more child offenders involved with the courts, with sexual medical offenders of kids, and foreign and domestic doctors' families putting fake transcripts, forging names of other doctors, also to motivate defenses of our side is a fake side. We never had representation. No leader of any country did. That's why and how they don't jump in and use these hyper evidentials, things we have. That's how and why they stay motivated. To keep other things, others ourselves blame when our founders and nature itself shows us a human factory nature breaching method, a torture, extortion, slavery method, and all rules of that. Boy, why is that worse? To anyone who sensed not rolls with it, again, everyone against themselves and against everyone else, right? Where and how we are systems tactical ulterior from natures. All counters to the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures are standing criminal insidious natures of positive treatment styles, needs, and natures. Certain type of victim /hyper victim, self-valuing dishonestly, self-valuing all kinds of natures of organized crimes at research campuses, campuses of all ages and natures that they know to an extent is fathomable. They want to debate that, preventing people while they want to fish for evidences, as the breaching method knew it could hide behind that on a mass scale. The identities law jump into our conversations dishonestly, involved with the relative criminal means to discern criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions or readings of statutes and precedents, collusions /collusions, because the breaching method employed all the plural roles with itself since some ancient times. This just reminds. That's what's discernible. So, in other words, a principal upskirt nature, a principal being. He also has people with the name Mike Levine involved at on and off town line drive locations with foreign and domestic intelligence and people along Route 3 and other natures of conjunctions like Route 3 to the state judicial branch offices. Involved with, I never had a word of conversation with him. He has wars with foreign and domestic medical families and people involved with the World Trade Center attack with all sides. And two, Saudi Arabia, before the World Trade Center attack, they said they didn't want to have entertained with the psychiatry and with the intelligence community the way it is. But also, all sides have criminally foreign influence, tax collusions, readings of books, including the religious books, to not just the Old Testament. To the beginning of the Old Testament, the Quran also has a part that says all that matters is if someone's going to be honest about their use of the name Allah as a scientific value. And it even qualifies that by directing the person not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. For example, let alone group reasons and simultaneous. In other words, you guys can't appreciate that country's A through Z. All the proofs, the free speech of anyone who's going to come honest regarding the value of how we have been systems tactical ulterior from the one that is also positive onto itself as nature, when nature is not criminal insidiousness. In other words, natural law is real, but to appreciate it, we have to appreciate why and how nature is showing us its identity relationship to it, difference, and as a special difference, what it shows, which is our value here, gained only further. We're already relativity positive and negative equally, apart from value, regardless if we're relative to the positive value, nature, progression, negative. And even that, again, this is through systems tactical ulterior from the one being led by the distinct identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. Again, in my videos, I describe it. This is what we are discerning, the body of a forever nature, as the present participle and as the past participle, as words hyper-additionally, as values hyper-additionally, to discern the complete identity of the verb. These are names. We need more than one word for a verb. We need to appreciate that because of what is being demonstrated to us by nature, inseparable from all. It's hypervolume science. Note, however, a subject is also, so all the parts of speech of English grammar are about the invisible / hyper-invisible. So it's about the conjunctive / hyperconjunctive. And nature itself shows us it is functional for us to understand. It wants and needs us to understand and to appreciate how there is a distinct identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible. And there's a method to check to make sure we're correct. Hyperintelligence is real. So Wethersfield Police have their Facebook page also with a Joshua Julian and with a Joshua Schumack, involved also with their families and neighbors, involved with years apart child abusers, leaders of kids, first forest, who hadn't had roles also with news, with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them, and with names including victims of the World Trade Center attack. To an extent, everyone's attached to fake and changed conversations and ties and natures of ties and locations and a sequence relativity with that. But two, both to an extent, all sides know, including our own, as victims, had collusions with the World Trade Center attack through what all that actually contained with trade, which is also relative to where and to how. People can make subject treatments regarding things like slavery, like the transatlantic slave trade, leaving out how sickly non-distinctly too, while sickly distinctly. Northern colonies and southern colonies had that breaching method entrenched before America's founders were born. See, measured and maintained are self-valued roles, communicating other for our founders about that than they communicated. Measured and maintained is no one allowing forgiveness for, for anyone being, when they start changing and faking our words. If we try to attend with, use what is actually recorded with our logic, with our reason, with nature proper. In other words, the New Britain Superior Court has rules through time with all kinds of natures of sick things and rape threats. Then they have the audacity to pretend they're about legitimate, and these are with other courts. New Britain Superior Court is involved with Harper Courts, the state, involved with district court, with the family members of the different positions with the campus, with the campuses, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, as the people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, differences, rackets, covering up. These are people with the religious spots too recorded involved, and names on all sides of it. Robert Rodriguez, people with the name Kerr. I don't know the names on other sides, but there are people on both sides of a religious spot on Route 3. And some other people tied to Mark Violet involved with UConn names. UConn's a great campus, but they have rules with psychiatry and their departments, like their students putting fake things in databases, acting, where they're putting fake transcripts, and forging names of other doctors too, and putting fake transcripts of them. Where and how they force mental evaluation, where people have to raise their voice and speak, otherwise respond to violence with counter violence. See, these campuses have roles forcing violence because they were already shown they have already roles with behavior racketeering, worse than war crimes. They have rules with tactical delusions, not just delusions. And that's why their self-valued roles, pretending other and showing means to get away with it. So while self-valued rules of child abuse is clearer than day. You think one science voice in New York City or anywhere spoke for the suburbs, honestly, let alone for New York City? Forgiveness is to allow one voice to not force, that hurts my feelings. They don't care about feelings. They change and fake our words. Same ones pretending to, in other words. That's what they have people doing. God shouldn't make me beg to get my short words appreciated regarding the fake conversations that Channel 3 had with me about the World Trade Center attack, which was their time collusions with the foreign and domestic, all kinds of people with whiting forensics and all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes. Also with people with Sandy Hook campuses involved with their kids and adults, with child offenders of kids next to the judicial branch offices, all sides of criminal and civil cases, including fire and medical campuses and families running into high lab regressions per when they mix, with all putting fake things in databases. And then they have names on all sides, making it look like they had communications with people, making it look like they even had words with them too. They're needing to hide lab regressions, also with criminal enterprises next to the campuses like Harvard Hospital through time. Involved also with the businesses like the Morrow's Market and Isle's Kitchen, not legitimately with unmarked police forms and pretending to be criminal enterprise or what. They're involved criminally foreign and tactically delusions wrought too, with mayors from Wethersfield on Facebook involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic. That's what's actually recorded. Joel come jumping up out of nowhere on Facebook after I was jogging, and he was trying. I didn't have any communications when I kept going. There's a former Mayor Gold involved with a whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold, increasingly involved with child offenders, leaders of kids, first force, and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people in next to campuses and side entrances to parks, and at the parks acting so others could take pictures, fake ties to people. In other words, that's recorded on a mass scale. People tied to Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, as the ones involved with the Yukon too, and other campuses. There are people from Trinity College too. They have celebrities and people that run the prisons, intercities and interstates that are also with foreign and domestic military off the Connecticut corrections offices. With people, a whole bunch of people at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University were influenced to put fake things in databases about me with my neighbors who are involved with the confessions of the police over the phone and the fake conversations with me at the police station too, as a kid and then as an adult. As their roles too, increasingly with the names that are tied to Saudi Arabia and Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with the former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants, their family members, in a whole bunch of different countries, and people inter-city and intra-city, inter-campus and intra-campuses, acting tied to roles with predicate acts with facts into databases, methods that are singularly bound by the hyper simultaneous breaching method that had slavery again, that had torture, extortion, fact-cheating nature, slavery against every single name on this continent. So northern colonies, southern colonies entrenched, and our roles with it sustained, only allowed, and then America's founders were born. They communicated about how and why they didn't have free speech regarding the breaching method. They declassified this. They declassified about how James Madison planned, forced the rest of the founders. There are proofs that Native Americans are a portion of our founders, plural, that we were directed to refer to as James Madison, singular. And then they went with that plan and got George Washington to agree. Some retired general with some leftover soldiers didn't have the means to counter the internationally entrenched and laws that backed internationally monitored conversations that were criminally pointed, tactically delusions raw. And then further, the companies and all things off the records of work, criminal enterprise, private ones, terrorists. When did that stop being connected? Black people see the suits and ties, counters, exceptions being and have been used as an array. We need forgiveness so we could show. That's one of the guilt on all sides. And it comes out when we try to use the hyper evidential, when we try to use our free speech, when I try to defend our rights. We have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought readings of statutes and precedents, the Constitution for which we stand. Boxings, that's just things, but long. We're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged and appreciated where, how, and why. We have rights that are too numerous to have to list. See their subject treatments? In other words, and with mass communications, all kinds of predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, criminally foreign influence, uses of time too. No. Both sides, the Democrats and Republicans, that difference it's hurting them because they entertain that difference used. The only way they knew, because they had campuses, the best one, the worst one, the difference of that too. Other replaced with nature and what our founders communicated to us. In other words, nature's going downhill. There aren't even worms walking out of the soil anymore because we are tactically denatured, landscape theater, our country's A through Z since before and right through our country's founding. It's not debatable. The reason it's gotten away with being and haven't been debated comes with other hyper evidential. All nature's of research campuses, a Quinnipiac University too, has roles with prosecutors and judges involved with Connecticut's District Court, New Britain Superior Court, the state judicial branch offices, corrections offices. Has something to do with the roles all along Route 3 and its conjunctions too, and Route 175 and its conjunctions with people named Violet involved with a whole bunch with this Leahy family too. The Leahy family had conversations with me. Them and other doctors are involved with Anthony Yagman, put with all kinds of federal evidence crimes and legal crimes and rackets and natures of organized crimes. with judges and prosecutors and doctors, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, at uh, Harvard Hospital, as people involved too with sexual abuses, sexually themed abuses, and roles with them of little girls in my area. And against little boys too, they're involved with mass identity theft, fraud, slanders, and fake motivations. Even when they have real ones, they're using that to hide their actual motivations with all these countries in the news. And they're leaking this because when they want to debate things, you guys aren't supposed to debate people about things you don't know. You're supposed to say, you get the interbranch on paper, one name in sequence. So Weathersfield police have a whole bunch of people involved too. They might have killed an officer who was reportedly in a car with another officer and got killed, who was involved with one of the ones involved with the foreign and domestic. There are Marines involved. Jay Salvatore. I never had a word of conversation with in my life. Never saw him on campus except for at Central Connecticut one time. That was a fake exception. And I saw him on my street one time. These are one of the ones involved with Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, has roles with the World Trade Center attack, before the World Trade Center attack, and in the attack, with the names who also interstates and internationally are being and had been used also hyper internationally, criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. And I'm not a lawyer, and that's not a real term, hyper criminally foreign influence. But nature shows us the need to discern this distinct identity of criminal foreign influences. For example, that which had that which was non-distinctly not only entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies with that method, that torture, extortion, factory nature, therefore physical slavery method against every single person. That was a method that forced the Civil War. With James Madison's plan to counter that method, it is also what forced it, because that was more so nature forcing it. But this breaching method knew that it could get nature, our natural counters, employed to roles, then self-defended as counters as collusion, and increasingly screening their motivations relative to the breaching method that knew, and it increasingly needs to keep things that nature has demonstrated to us, blamed on other things other than ourselves. Like why and how the breaching method itself is what we are scientifically supposed to blame regarding what caused slavery and reassignment of what black pupils and whites of eyes communicate. Our founders communicated this. So when they have people pretending passions and emotions in another kind of, well, I'm normal, so why would I pretend passion and emotion? Well, this time it's a school shooting. They have roles with all kinds of natures of organized crime against each age and nature of our human fact-driven nature. The identities, the law, there are wire and mail crime acts and methods that are simultaneously, why they have, predicate acts with facts with databases since before computers know this method to exploit it, the corruption there or at the other places, and the exceptions. This is a breaching that has all roles, using exceptions in exception nature, tactical ulterior, from how it shows us to appreciate exceptions, exception nature. All exceptions, exception nature are being used by everyone as truths used for lies, or as truths used as criminal and citizen's natures of positive treatments, truth treatments. In other words, all kinds of mental health corruption. People should be depressed, and if you're not depressed about what the cities are about, you don't understand what's designed the suburbs. And you don't understand it because you had our founders' communications regarding the founding locations replaced. You have instead this breaching method showing that with the quote experts, they need to keep other things, others ourselves blamed from where and how their styles, needs, and natures being and have been used remotely. Their fact-keeping nature, quality aspects in nature too. Ugh. That's what it's about. We replacing what nature communicates with our founders did about black and white. Let alone, but then about applications about that by nature itself, like why we're and how we have black people's right to lie. Birds, fish,